You're about to discover one of the best gambits in the history of chess. Plus, this gambit is with the black pieces, and it's allowed me to have some laughs and win a ton of games. So, I'm going to show you how to play it and a bunch of traps that you can use when you play it yourselves. What I like most about this gambit is that we're going to play it when they play the Italian opening against us. That is the most played opening in the history of chess. Therefore, we can use this gambit on many occasions. When they play the Italian opening, you simply have to play this move right here, f5, an extremely powerful move. First of all, we're giving away a pawn, but it's a poison pawn. It can't be taken. If they take the pawn, they're going to have serious problems. But don't worry, I'll explain in this video what to do, whether they capture the pawn or not. But what happens, chess teacher, if they capture this pawn? Why is it a poison pawn? Well, simply what we were doing with the move f5 wasn't just giving away a pawn, but diverting their central pawn. It was the pawn that held their position together. Now we're going to play this spectacular pawn advance e4, thanks to the fact that we've diverted their central pawn. Let's look at some. We're attacking the knight. Very well, chess teacher. Everyone can see that. But where can this knight go? It couldn't go to these two squares. Why? Because the queen is controlling them. It couldn't jump here either because the knight controls it, just like the d4 square. Therefore, this knight, simply for having captured the pawn, should retreat back, once again, to its starting square. Very well, if it were to retreat, we'd simply play d5, attacking this bishop, and when it moved away, we'd recapture the pawn we're down with a very large advantage. But here, there's still an option for the white pieces to try to save themselves from retreating the knight back. And it's the option I run into the most. Here, when I advance this pawn, they take a little while to move while they think, and they reach the conclusion that they can play queen e2, pinning this pawn. Very well, they've pinned our pawn. It's true that now we can't capture, but this has a super simple solution. You pin my pawn? Well, I'll place my queen in front of the king too. And now this pawn is attacking the knight again. Solution. Right now, this knight is once again being threatened and can't go anywhere. It must retreat back. It's that simple. And now comes the best part. You can play this whether they've played queen e2 or not, because you already know you have a very good option. So here we'll play knight f6. We develop our pieces normally. I assure you that this gambit is very, very good. I've even played it in slow game tournaments with a very good success rate. In slow games, huh? In fast games, you can't even imagine how well it works. Very well. Now, white logically wants to develop the knight, but what happens? They just can't. If they try to develop this knight over here, it's a disaster. What they want is to try and develop this knight over here. And if they want to develop the knight on f3 and want to start developing their bishop too, they only have one possible move, d3, which actually looks like a super good move. It threatens our central pawn. It lets the bishop out. When this pawn is gone, they'll be able to develop the knight on f3, but we've practically won the game here with a move you're gonna love. Pay attention to this move. Knight d4! Exclamation point. What are we attacking? Well, the first threat is obvious. We're attacking the queen, right? But we also have another threat. Knight takes c2, check, and we'd also take the rook. In other words, they must move the queen to one of these two squares, either d1 or d2, to keep defending the c2 point. If they don't move it to those two spots and, for example, place it on f1, very bad move. We'd win the rook. But what they don't know is that no matter if they go to d1 or d2, it doesn't matter to us. The threat is still there, and we're going to drop the spectacular bombshell of knight takes c2 check. We're going to take the rook, so they must capture this knight. And here, we haven't won the rook, but we have won the queen, thanks to this discovered attack. Pawn takes d3. Check, and we're going to take the queen. They could play, for example, knight e2, trying to save themselves, but we take the queen with the pawn. And if they try to block with the queen, well, we'll simply capture it with the pawn. Don't capture it with the queen, because then they'd recapture with the knight. Instead, simply d takes e2 and we'd have an extra queen. But this is just the beginning of this gambit, because, watch out, things keep getting better and better. We win immediately, as we've seen if they play d3. Careful, one of the most common moves in the position, because it's very hard to play anything else. The knight doesn't move. This bishop can't move either. But it's true that this knight on c3 can move. What happens, chess teacher, if instead of playing d3, they develop the knight in a supernatural way? Well, don't worry, because here we continue in a spectacular way. Knight d4 again. As you can see, this gambit isn't complicated. The moves repeat quite a bit in the different lines. Therefore, the right moves will always come to mind. We attack the queen. Now it can retreat without any problem. Logically, it must go to d1 because we're threatening the fork again. But now the tactical theme of knight takes c2 wouldn't work, right? Because they'd simply take our knight and nothing happened here. All right, so here we're going to play with logic. We would love to play d5. We could do it if our opponent hadn't played queen e2 and us queen e7, because the queen would be defending this point. However, since they play the queen game, we can't play d5 directly. Or can we? 5, brutal move. It's true that now it's wonderful, right? If they move the bishop, we've achieved what we wanted. We're going to win back the pawn. But of course, this pawn is completely free. And they have two pieces threatening it. They can capture it. Knight takes and bishop takes, for example, right? And now we are down 2 pawns. Actually, it's only 1 because we're going to recapture this pawn on f5. You know, that when we're down a pawn, if we justify it by having much more initiative and a stronger attack, it's much better to have the attack than the pawn. In this case, our opponent hasn't developed any pieces, they just have a very poorly placed bishop here because no one is defending it, and we have a super active knight, a pawn restricting the position, and an extremely active bishop as well. We can advance and launch this attack here. We can threaten this bishop with various consequences for the white pieces. This queen is very active with discovered attacks. And to top it off, excuse me, we can castle queenside to bring the rook in too. So in this position, we're doing great. And not only that, but white can make multiple mistakes here. The first mistake I see most often, and it's the most natural move in the position, is developing this knight to e2, since they can't develop it to f3 or h3 because we double the pawns and be extremely well off. People usually develop their knight to e2, and this is a serious mistake, a very, very serious one. Why? Because we can follow up with a totally impressive move. The bishop g4 pen. This knight has penned itself. With the move bishop g4, we pressure this knight with both knight and bishop. And as you can see, there's no way to save it. None at all. If they play f3, we just exchange and threaten the pin and the rook again. Therefore, we're going to win this knight. Knight e2 wouldn't be a possible move. All right, a move I also see on many occasions is c3, saying, let's see, what's really bothering me is this knight right here. It's pressure in many squares, and so what I want is to threaten it so it leaves. If we withdraw the knight, it's true, white has achieved their goal. But here's a tactical theme that probably wouldn't have occurred to you if you hadn't seen the video, which for this alone, you'll have to leave a like, because now when they play c3, you'll simply know the correct move is knight f3, double exclamation mark. A spectacular bombshell. Check. It's obvious they can capture our knight. If they capture it with the queen, we win the queen. If they capture with the knight, we just recapture, discover check, we take here, so the only good move seems to be capturing with the pawn, ensuring they take our knight. However, we can continue with pawn takes f3, discover check with the queen, this king has to move, and now when the king moves, we'll simply follow with bishop d3 check, they must block, we'll capture with the pawn, check, we take the queen, and this will be a complete bargain for us. And if when we capture this pawn, instead of moving the king, which as you've seen would practically end in checkmate, or at least winning the queen, they block directly with the knight, this makes a lot of sense, you see? We just gave away a knight. The opponents might think, well, now I'll give it back to you and we'll continue the game. Well, no, because here there's a spectacular bombshell that I'd like you to pause the video and try to find to see if you're able to. I'm going to explain it to you right now. Pay attention. The move is bishop to c2. It's very logical. We're threatening the queen and she can't go anywhere. The only move available to not lose her is to capture this bishop. And since we've deflected the queen from defending the knight, we'd simply follow up with queen takes e2, checkmate. You're gonna love this when we play this gambit here and they capture you. Remember, it's very important to advance the threat in this knight, but they might not fall for the trap of playing queen e2. It's very likely they will, yes. We've already seen how this ends, but for many people, we threaten the knight, they see it can't go anywhere, and indeed they retreat the knight to not lose it. They're the only two possible moves, the only two queen e2 and retreating the knight. We've already seen queen e2. What happens if they retreat the knight? Logically, as I was telling you, we're going to play d5, threatening this bishop. We don't really care where this bishop goes. Maybe the most active is to place it on b5 to threaten our knight. Yes, we could follow up with bishop takes f5. It would be a totally extraordinary move. As you can see, thanks to this gambit, we'll recover the pawn. We're not even down any pawns. And also, after bishop takes f5, knight f6, bishop c5, short castle, opening the diagonal for the rook, this will be a totally comfortable game for us. But we even have a better move that I love, which is queen g5, which is the one I always use when they retreat the knight directly back. Now, there are things you should know. First of all, we're threatening queen takes g2, winning the rook, because there'd be no way to defend it, and then attacking the knight. Therefore, here, well, what do most do? First, they capture this knight, and you should know this. First, you recapture here. Why? Because it's check, so first you recapture this piece here, and now they absolutely have to address the threat on g2. If they don't exchange, it's exactly the same. Don't worry. They should simply stop this threat. And there's simply three ways to defend this threat king f1, which would be fabulous for us. We'd continue with our development, bishop takes, knight f6, we can even attack a lot, right? Castle, and we place the rook on the same file as the king, but no one has played king f1 against me to date. They've just made two moves, g3 and g4. Let's see them both. If they play g3, how can we continue? Well, here, there are many ways to continue. Among them, bishop takes f5, it would be a totally extraordinary way. In fact, it's what I recommend to you. Bishop takes f5, and now they're left with many weaknesses on the king side. We're not down a pawn, we're equal in material, and our position is quite superior. We have the b file for the rook. We're going to develop the bishop on c5, pointing directly at this f2 point. The knight will come out via f6. Castle will attack the f2 point again, also with the rook, and this seems to be quite bad for the white pieces. Mind you, the move I see most is g4, so now they're defending this pawn very strongly. They keep holding on to their extra pawn. The g4 pawn is protected by the queen, and it looks like we're running into trouble continuing our development. This bishop looks like it can only come out here or here, but don't worry, because what you simply need to do here, and I love this, I love the look on, well, I won't say a bad word, right? The look on my opponent's faces when I play bishop takes f5. And they immediately realized that this move was extremely bad. Bishop takes f5 is simply winning back the pawn. But why are we giving away the bishop? Well, don't worry, because the bishop cannot be captured. It would open up the line for us to play queen g2, attacking the rook. Can that rook be defended? No, they're going to lose the rook. But they always do the same thing to me. First, they give me a check. I can't play g6 because they trade and I lose the rook. Careful, it's not that easy. So don't worry. If they try to check you, don't be afraid at all. Just move the king away. There's no fear if you're going to win a free rook. You shouldn't be afraid of anything at all. For example, if they keep attacking you, careful. There's no rush to capture that rook, because that rook isn't going anywhere. Let's defend well first against a simple attack, because it's just the queen coming in. She can't do anything. She threatens the bishop with a check. I play knight h6, attacking the queen. And now this bishop is very well defended by the rook. How can they continue? Well, the only more or less normal square the queen has is this one right here, right? Queen e3, sorry, queen e6, but this is a complete mistake. We could capture the rook directly, but the move I like most is this one here, bishop d6. And now, as you can see, this rook cannot be saved. This queen has nowhere to go. We're trapping the queen, so this queen will surely end up being lost as well. Against any move, instead of capturing the rook, I'm going to play rook e8, capturing the queen. She has nowhere to go. And not only that, but I'll capture the queen and then even capture the rook as well. This happened to him for trying to come in and create counterplay with the queen. I see it a lot. If they don't try this counterplay, it's fine. They'll just lose the rook and that's it. Be very careful with this. Very careful. We're attacking the knight, and we've seen both queen e2 and knight g1, right? They seem to be the only two options if they don't want to lose the knight. But here, if you play against a professional player or someone who knows this gambit, well, they might play this huge knight sacrifice, knight d4. Don't worry, it looks like a brutal sacrifice. In fact, it is a brutal sacrifice if we don't know it. But if we do, like in this video where I'm going to show you, there's no problem at all. Why is this a good move? Well, you shouldn't capture it because then they'd come in with the queen, give you a massive check. You couldn't move forward because they'd capture you. Plus, they're threatening a discovered attack we can't capture because they take our rook, right? If we play knight f6, they sacrifice the queen with the move g7, a brutal move, because we capture the queen and they play g takes h8, capturing the rook and promoting another queen. So this would be quite horrible for us. So, conclusion, what should you do if they play this massive knight sacrifice on d4, which, as I said, is extremely dangerous? Well, simply play knight f6, preventing the queen's entry, just like that. And absolutely nothing has happened here. Now we really are threatening the knight. Logically, they must do something. For example, the most common thing is to capture in 80% of games, but if they don't capture, it doesn't matter, right? Let's continue with our ideas. We're going to recapture with the b pawn so that now, whatever the opponent plays, we'll follow up with d5, threatening the bishop. We're going to recapture this pawn on f5. And as you can see, in this gambit, whenever we want, we're going to get back the pawn we gave away. And on top of that, we'll be better off. Let me give you a very quick example, for instance. I'm going to develop my pieces like this, so that now it's going to be very hard for them to get out. Let's castle. This file will also be completely open. We can advance a lot through here. This position is a clear advantage for black, even though they've tried to play the correct gambit. I'm sure someone in the comments is going to say, well, I've checked this gambit with Stockfish, and here the move it recommends isn't capturing this pawn, but the best move is to play d4, counterattacking in the center. First of all, correct. Now I'll show you how to play if they play d4, which is the best move according to the engine. However, those of you watching this can also look at how often white plays d4, and you'll see that only 3% of people play d4 against the gambit we're proposing. Therefore, it's something very unusual, but if they play it against you, you must be well prepared. What are we going to do? Well, first of all, we're going to recapture this pawn with our f-pawn. Very well, we're attacking the knight. Most likely, they'll play knight takes e5. Now, this knight does have a good square to escape to, and that's by capturing a central pawn. Without a doubt, this looks much better for white. That's right, it looks better. Even so, we're doing very well. Although it might be a bit scary, don't worry, because you're gonna learn it. We're not gonna capture the knight, but instead we'll play d5, threatening this knight, this bishop here. Excuse me. Mind you, now white can do the following. Either move the bishop away, which would be perfect because it would give us a tempo to play knight f6 and prevent queen entries, or play queen h5 directly, a very good move because it's directly threatening our king with the knight and the queen. And it seems like we have no way out here because g6 is impossible since knight takes g6 would follow. Well, that's exactly what we're going to do because this, even though it looks very good for white, isn't actually that great. They're anticipating too much, perhaps rushing too much. Knight f6 attacks the queen, attacks the knight, and also attacks the bishop. For now, they can save themselves. To save the knight, they must place this queen, which is under attack, on the same file as the rook, for example. The only move they have is queen h4, since h3 would be controlled by our bishop from a distance. It's true, now we can't capture this knight because simply they would capture our rook, and we can't capture this bishop either because they would simply capture our rook as well. So, what should we do? Well, don't worry because it's much simpler than it seems. We're going to do the following. First of all, how can we continue the attack? Well, with a brutal move, knight takes d4. We have two pawns against two pawns, meaning we're equal in material. They still can't take the rook because if they take the rook, simply what we would do now is knight takes c2, winning a pawn and then taking their rook. That would be fabulous for us. Besides, this knight would surely end up trapped. What should they do? Well, they must try to defend the two things being attacked, the pawn on c2 and the bishop on c4. Those are the two things being attacked right now. What move could they make? Bishop b3, it seems laudable. They withdraw the attack bishop and defend the c2 point. But this, my friends, is a mistake. Why is it a mistake? Because now we're going to jump back with this knight. Knight f5 attacking the queen. It must stay on the same file as the rook. Otherwise, we'll capture the knight. So they have to play queen h3, and there's no other way. And then here, we're going to start looking for discovered attacks with this knight to attack the queen with the bishop. And the best move, without a doubt, is this one right here. 97. We attack the queen, but not only that, we also attack this knight in such a way that we've managed to win a piece completely clean. It's true, they've tried to attack a lot with their pieces, with their queen, but even so, we've come out winning a clean piece. It's a bit scary, but it's simple. It's very likely that just by watching this video once, you won't remember all of this. That's okay. You can save this video to watch it as many times as you need. So, many of you will surely tell me, instead of playing bishop b3, I'll go into the line you told me. I take your rook and you take mine, and it seems like there's a game here, but don't worry because this doesn't work. If they try to do knight takes h8 winning the rook, you could even do the following. Look, knight takes f2 check, the king must move, and instead of capturing the rook first, we capture the bishop first because that rook can't escape. So right now we're going to win this rook and we'll have a free bishop. And not only that, but also this knight is going to have big problems getting out. Whatever they do, for example, here the most common move I found in the database is bishop g5, putting a lot of pressure on this knight, but this isn't effective at all. Even with this, we could deliver this tremendous checkmate, one of the most important moves you should remember from this position. If they don't do this, don't worry, because you'll be able to capture the rook, play bishop g7, win this knight, and at the very least you'll have an extra bishop or a bishop and a knight. I love it when I play this gambit and people get scared, and instead of capturing or doing something weird, they say, well, I'll just defend the pawn with d3. Watch out, because this is the move I run into most often in my games. Because people think, well, my opponent has probably prepared for me to capture the pawn, so I'll defend it. If he captures, I'll recapture, and everything's fine. Well, don't worry, because we have some very good news here. Bishop c5, a very strong move. Now then, White could keep recapturing and we'd be in a similar position, but what's happening is that we're tempting White to make this massive move. With the bishop and knight, they're threatening the f7 square. It seems like a tremendously brutal threat. It really seems almost impossible to stop. We should probably play knight h6 or something like that. But we're going to act like we didn't see it and disconnect the knight from the bishop in such a way that we're now threatening it. Therefore, we're forcing our opponent to continue on their path. There's no turning back now. The queen is under threat. The rook is under threat. Most likely, your opponent will tell you in the app's chat, my friend, just resign. But not at all, because he's the one who has to resign here. We're going to play queen h4, counterattacking the f2 square very hard. A very, very strong move. Also, you'll see that this pawn we've advanced is extremely important. Logically, knight takes rook would lead to mate on the next move. They have to try to defend this square. Queen f3 doesn't work because, for example, we could attack the queen and this square here. Or my favorite is to play this pawn here, and then whatever they do, play bishop g4 and win the queen because it has no squares. That's why queen f3 is useless here. G3 seems like a very bad move because we could simply slip in with the queen through the light squares, even with the pawn, and this position will be extremely difficult to defend. Here we could attack the queen and the f2 square with the bishop as well, and this is extremely hard for white to defend. So let me explain. They always play the same thing against me, either queen f3, which is terrible, or castling. If they castle, it seems like everything is saved. There's no more attack because this is well defended. We're not attacking here, and it simply looks like we're going to lose the rook. And now what, chess teacher? It seems like I'm going to lose no matter what, and there's no way to save ourselves. Well, relax. Let them take the rook, knight f6, and when they capture the rook, knight g4 so that we're threatening checkmate on h2. And not only that, we're also threatening to attack f2 with 3 pieces. Naturally, they'll defend against the mate with h3 because there's no other move that stops the checkmate. And when they play h3, we simply attack from here. Knight takes f2. They logically have to give up the rook, otherwise we'd have a discovered attack with the bishop. And when they give up the rook, we're going to capture with the queen. So right now, we're down a knight. Remember, we're down a knight because we captured a rook, but so did they. And we've sacrificed the knight, and they haven't. So we're down a knight. That said, the game is forced to a win. The king has to go to h1. And remember this move well because it's key. f3, we're threatening checkmate on the next move, so they must capture. And now what we're going to do is simply play d5, threatening the bishop and threatening the inner here. Can they try to stop bishop takes h3? No, there's no move for white that avoids bishop takes h3, so since they're at it, they try to defend their bishop. For example, bishop takes d5, right? So now we continue with bishop takes h3, and this really can't be stopped. We're threatening queen g2, checkmate. No matter how much they try to come and trade queens here, it would be queen takes g1 checkmate because the queen is well defended by the bishop. Therefore, no matter how much they try to play passively against this gambit, they're going to have serious problems. So if you made it to the end of the video, leave me a like. It doesn't cost you anything, and I really appreciate it. And I have a great time reading your comments too. So I hope you loved it, and we'll see each other tomorrow. As always, friends, in the next chess video. Goodbye.